Let's talk about toddlers and preschoolers. This is Ember. She's 1 year old, and I'm Sarah Brown. I'm the mother of 9 children, and a friend of mine asked me to make a video to help moms of preschoolers. So the first thing we need to talk about is getting your child to listen to you and follow your instructions. So the first thing you need to do is you need to train your child to listen to your voice and train your child to understand when you're serious. So the first thing you need to do is when you want to give your child instructions, you need to get their attention. Ember, give that to Mommy. Thank you. Good girl. You can have it. Good girl. So she's 1 year old, and when I say her name, she looks at me, and then I give her instructions, and she responds. Now, a lot of kids don't respond to their parents unless their parents are yelling at them, and a lot of times they won't obey the first time you speak to them. And we train our children to do this. It goes like this. Clean up your toys. The child ignores you. Clean up your toys. The child ignores you. Jonathan, clean up your toys right now. And that's when the child obeys. He knows you're not serious when you speak to him softly and nicely, but when you use his name and you speak with a firm voice, or maybe you yell at him, he listens. But wouldn't you like to have a child that listens to you and obeys the first time you speak? So you need to train your child that you're serious when you use a soft voice. Ember, give Mommy one. Give one to Mommy. Yep, give Mommy one. Yep, you can have one. See, she understands that I'm speaking to her. Now, you can train your child to listen to your yelling voice, or you can train your child to listen to your soft voice. That's up to you. But the important thing is if you're going to give your child instructions, you need to make sure that you get their attention. You use their name, and then when they turn to look at you, you make eye contact with the child, and then you give them the instructions. Now, little children don't think this way we think. A lot of times they know a few words, but mostly they understand words they can visualize, because when they're little, they think in pictures and they think with feelings. They don't think with words, and there's a lot of words they just don't really understand. They can understand the words that they can relate to pictures or feelings. So if you were to say to a small child, "Don't touch the cat," they would understand the word touch because that's something they understand, and they can understand the word cat because they know what a cat is. It's something they can visualize. So what they're going to do is touch the cat. They're trying to please you and follow your instructions, but they don't really understand words like don't and the. They'll begin to understand words like that when they're about 3 or 4 years old, but when they're little, they mostly understand words they can visualize. So that's just going to be something you're going to have to figure out how to communicate with your child. Now, you can train them to understand words like stop, but still, that's going to be a struggle. So when they're little, before they're 3 years old, if you want the child to stop, you need to get their attention. Ember, stop. Yeah, see, she's giving it to me instead of putting it in her own mouth. But when they're little, they need to learn the meaning of stop by you helping them to stop. Now, when you have a little child, it's important to choose your battles. Choose what's important to you. Picky eaters, that is a problem that all moms have, because you want to be a good mom, so you want to make sure your child eats their vegetables. And most children who are ages 2 to 5 are not interested in eating leafy green things or pretty much anything new. Now, little children who are between 1 and 2 are usually happy to eat anything you put in front of them, but something happens around the time they turn 2. So here's my advice. When you first start giving your child foods, give them simple foods that you want them to be trained to eat. So, yeah, eat. So what I usually start with are things like steamed green beans, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, sweet potatoes. I make sure it's nice and soft and in little bite-sized pieces. And that's the kind of food I introduce to them, because if they get used to eating these foods when they're little, they're not going to reject them when they're 2 and 3 and 4. But a lot of times, people will just give their little children baby food and then think that when they're 2 and 3 and 4, they can introduce big people food. Now, here's what happens. Children are designed to start becoming more independent from their moms when they're 2.5, 3, and 4. And so when children are out in nature, they're surrounded by all kinds of things that are green and leafy and colorful. And so a child has this built-in desire to reject anything that looks like leaves and flowers and berries. So chances are, if you have a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, or a 4-year-old, and sometimes 5-year-olds, they are going to reject anything that looks like salad and any new vegetable you put in front of them. And this is a natural reflex for a little child because they are programmed by God not to eat leaves, because leaves could be poison. And when little kids get to be that age when they start to wander, there's a good chance that they're going to encounter leafy green things that could be poisonous. So if you haven't introduced your child to leafy green foods before they get to this stage where they start rejecting everything new and leafy and green, you need to help them feel very comfortable eating their vegetables. So one thing that I find works really well if you want your child to eat salad, and that's an important thing, is I chop the leaves up into little pieces and I mix it with some mayonnaise so it doesn't look like a leaf straight off of a tree, and they'll be much more likely to eat it. But don't be surprised if your child rejects vegetables. The important thing is to introduce vegetables before they get to the picky stage. And the reason they go through the picky stage is to protect them from eating things in nature that could be dangerous. Your child isn't trying to be disobedient by rejecting vegetables. Your child is simply programmed not to eat those things. So now let's talk about bedtime and nap time. A lot of children will give their mommies and daddies a very difficult time when it's time to go to bed. And this is usually because the child isn't tired. So what do you need to do to help your child to be tired at bedtime? What do we need to do? You need to establish a routine with your child. So when my children are very little, the age where they fall asleep nursing or fall asleep in my arms, I'll notice when they're beginning to get sleepy. And then we'll start a very simple bedtime routine. So your child's getting sleepy and they're having those long blinks, and you can tell, no thank you. You can tell that they're ready to fall asleep. This is when you choose a little rhyme or a little song that's going to trigger the sleep reflex in your child. So for about 5 days in a row, you might be holding your child, notice them getting sleepy, and you'll begin the sleepy time routine. So what I'll usually do is pick up the child's special blanket or special stuffed animal and hand them their stuffed animal, and then I'll say the same little rhyme. And so with my kids, I found that they like the little rhyme, All the Pretty Little Horses. So I'll say, hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleep, my little baby. When you wake, you shall have all the pretty little horses. Blacks and bays, dapples and grays, all the pretty little horses. And so that little poem will begin to trigger the sleepy feelings. And holding that special animal or special blanket will also begin to trigger the sleepy feelings. So as they're falling asleep, I'll just repeat that rhyme over and over. But before I do, of course, I'll make sure that the child's ready for bed. They're all dressed up in their pajamas. They've had their bath if they need one. And everything is calm and peaceful. And then we just begin our little rhyme. And because they're hearing that familiar rhyme that you've sang to them or spoken to them so many times when they're sleepy, they're just going to begin getting drowsy. Another thing you could do if you don't like reciting poetry or you're not interested in singing, have a favorite little bedtime book like Goodnight Moon. And get that book out right before bedtime and read it to the child when they're getting sleepy. And the child will just begin to feel sleepy, and bedtime will be so much easier. I really don't enjoy having battles with my children at bedtime. It's so much easier if they're tired. And so having a little bedtime routine really helps. Now, let's see. Little children are designed to copy their mommies and their daddies and their brothers and their sisters because they're trying to learn how to be. And so if your child has a lot of bad habits, you might want to take a good look at yourself and say, does my child have these bad habits simply because he or she is copying me or somebody in our house? Does your child whine a lot? Do you whine a lot? Does your child complain a lot? Do you complain a lot? Often you might hear a 4-year-old say, leave me alone, I have a headache. And you know exactly where that child learned that. And your child will repeat the phrases that you say to them, and your child will begin to respond to situations just the way you do. So when I want to teach my little children to help around the house, the best way to do it is by doing work around the house and smiling and singing songs and making a fun game out of it. So when I sweep the floor, I'll just make up a little song about sweeping the floor, and I'll let them see me sweeping the floor and smiling. And I need a broom to sweep the room. I need a broom to sweep the room and praise the Lord. I need a broom to sweep the room. I need a broom to sweep the floor. I need a broom to sweep the room and praise the Lord. So we'll just make up these little songs, and the children will see that doing work around the house is something that makes mommy happy, and then they will automatically want to do it too. How about sharing? Sharing is a problem that lots of preschoolers have problems with. Now, the main reason that preschoolers don't like to share, or the reason they take toys away from other children, is because little children are programmed to follow the example of the people in their world. So if you have a couple of toddlers together, you'll notice that one child will be playing with a toy and the other child will instantly want to play with that toy too. And that is because little children love to do what the other children are doing. And that's good and that's normal. But you might say, you have your own toys. Why don't you play with your own toys? And then they'll begin to fight and they'll take the toys away from each other. And understanding why they do this, it will really help you out, because when they're under 3 years old, they're always going to want what the other child has. So a good idea is to have similar toys for the other children to play with, and the older children should be ready to teach the little children how to share. So sharing by example is a really good idea. Okay, now, one reason little children don't like to share their things is because they get this idea from their mommies that you shouldn't share your things. When your toddler gets into your purse and puts their lipstick all over your lipstick on their face, the first thing you do is say, no, don't touch, that's Mommy's. And then, no, I wasn't talking to you. You can have it. She thinks I was saying that piece of bread is Mommy's. Okay. But what they begin to do is think, oh, Mommy doesn't like to share her things. Whenever I get into Mommy's special things, Mommy says, don't touch. So whenever I have something special and another child wants it, I'm going to say, don't touch, and I'm not going to let them play with my things. And a lot of times when your child has something of yours, there's a good chance you're going to quickly grab it out of their hands and reprimand them for taking something that belongs to you that they shouldn't have. So if you'd like to teach your little child to share, a good thing to do is play with something yourself. And when the little child notices you playing with it, have a good response. Look at this. Oh. Hey. Do you want this? Do you want to play with it too? Uh-oh. And so when I play with something and then I share it with my child, they're learning that Mommy likes to share, and sharing is a good thing. So being a good example to your child is one of the greatest things that you can do to teach them to share, because they're going to reflect their relationship with you, with others. Now, it's getting late here, and she's getting a little tired, cranky, and hungry. Hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleep, my little baby. When you wake, you shall have all the pretty little horses, blacks and bays, dapples and grays, all the pretty little horses. Well, that's all we'll talk about for now. We talked about why little children don't like sharing, why little children don't like leafy green vegetables and salad, and why they take things away from each other, and why they do the opposite of what you tell them to do. We're going to review really quickly, just so you won't forget. If a child is disobeying your instructions, you say, don't touch the cat, there's a good chance what they heard was, touch cat, right? So no wonder they're confused, because they visualize the word touch, and they visualize the word cat, and then they touch the cat. Now, the child rejects the leafy green vegetables. Well, that's because children, when they're little, aren't supposed to eat leafy green things out in the yard and in the garden. So, you have to disguise the leafy green vegetables as something safe, or make sure you introduce those things to them before they're 2 years old. Okay, why do children want to take toys away from other children? Because children are designed to copy what other people are doing so they can learn what to do. So when they see someone doing something, they want to figure out how to do it too. So that's normal, that little children would want to take things away from other children. And then why don't little ones share? Because whenever they see something they want that belongs to Mommy or a big brother or sister, we quickly take it away from them. So be a good example to your child and understand the reasons behind toddler behavior. And it's time for her to go to sleep. Hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go